Hello everyone, welcome to the video of how I repaired this eBay Starcom vehicle that I got to dissect and experiment with in the hopes of repairing my own Starcom vehicle. I hope to explain to you and get some clarity as to my mission, my quest to get it fixed. So this is my Starcom vehicle. Um, I needed the wings off of the one I ordered from eBay. And we're going to start here by turning it upside down and removing the 7 screws that tie down the bottom of the vehicle. Now, before I started this quest, I should say, I did disassemble the vehicle before and take a look at the insides and see how they operated, and tried to figure out why the motor wouldn't work. I took the time to check it out and couldn't get anywhere with it, so I put it back together and then I put it away. That was last summer. Okay, so now we're ready to remove the cargo carrier portion of the vehicle. So the best way I find is just to pull down on it and it pops right off. No big deal, put it aside and we'll flip it back over here. I find that it's easier to remove the bottom portion with it upside down, that way nothing else falls out, and then just keep it upside down like that while you're working on the railing system that's attached to the bottom of the ship. Okay, now go ahead and remove the 4 screws that attach, I guess, the railing system to the bottom of the ship. And it doesn't really matter where you get your screws from, they're all the same size. So it's not one of them tricky toys that you have to worry about the length and width. of each screw that you take out and map it out somewhere else on your table. You can just pile them up and it's no big deal. Now go ahead and set everything else aside and just focus on the gearing box and the railing system, and let's go ahead and take it apart and see how it works. So once you remove the two screws that hold the gearbox inside this gear mechanism doohickey thing, you're able to see this big gear and the gearbox. There's that gearbox that cuts out on everybody. If you still have a toy that it works on, wow, it's amazing that it still works. But anywho, there it is, that little sucker. That's the thing that gives everybody trouble. So that's the way it's supposed to sit in there, and turning the gear back and forth, that's how it interacts. So it can fall out, and we take a look at it. And as I'm looking at it, I can see that there's no force on it. It looks like the spring is already coming out of the gearbox. So for this next step, it's good to get out your small tools. For this part, I got my tools for my glasses. It's a small repair kit for your glasses, and it has a magnifying glass at the end of the screwdriver, which comes in handy when you want to inspect the gears and make sure there's no teeth that are come off or come apart or that type of thing. And yeah, we just put it together and get it ready. So here I can see there's no real tension when I move that little gear. Whoop. There's no tension. The spring is coming out. It turns. You can see the bottom of that steel peg turn when I move the gear. So I'm thinking it's probably that S-spring that's come detached from that stainless steel peg that holds it in there. Now, I'm going to show you two ways of doing this. This is the quick way. It's kind of quick and dirty. And I found these online on Amazon, and they fit. The tolerances on there, it's a little tight, just a little bit. If you want to, shave off one side a little bit just to make it fit easier. But either way, it'll fit in there very well. It's the same size as the old gearbox, and yeah, I think that worked. That worked pretty well. So if you're wondering where I got the gearbox, there it is. You can get 25 of these little wind-up toys. It's an assortment of them for $1.99 on Amazon. So I went ahead and I ordered a bag of them, and I went through. There's 3 different types of these wind-up toys, and the ones that walk are the ones that fit this particular vehicle. Okay, so this is the Starcom bomber that I've been experimenting on, and I'm going to show you how I fixed this. Now, mind you, I when I first took it apart, I took the gearbox out of it and I put it in a little bag, along with a couple of others that I took out of several other vehicles that I'm trying to fix as well. So for the past couple of weeks, I've been tinkering with each one of them whenever I had a chance to, figure it out, get familiar with the gearbox, putting it back together and such. And I had finally got it to work. I had finally gotten the darn thing to work, and my wife and I had gone out to get something to eat, and I had left the bag with the little gearboxes inside the Jeep. And we had brought along our 2 Scottish Terriers with us in the Jeep. And when we got back, after we had eaten, they had eaten my gearboxes from the bag. Yeah, total jerks. So I was stuck with a dilemma. Well, what am I going to do? I don't have a working gearbox for this toy. So I started searching for alternative methods, and this is what I came up with. So for this toy, I experimented, and I put the new gearbox in it, and it worked just fine. Let me show you. Okay, so this is the gearbox that's in it, and as you can see, it fits nicely. It fits snugly. It does. It's probably off by like a micron, and this is the toy it came out of. I'm gonna take it apart here and let you see how it works. So as you can see, as soon as I remove it out of the toy, it's the same gearbox that I showed you before. It's the same thing, just hasn't been modified yet, and we're going to get to that right now. So the first thing you have to do is you have to remove these off-center circle things. I guess they're clogs or pegs. You got to remove them from both sides of the gearbox, and you got to remove them in such a way that they don't move the peg inside. Because once you remove one side, the peg will start sliding with inside the housing, and you got to be careful not to pull it all the way through the gearbox housing, or else you mess up the motor. Then you have to take apart the little gearbox and put it back together with the metal peg. So I need to get some pliers. Yeah, get these needle nose pliers that they're the most difficult to work with. And holding down the one side that I already took that offset peg, and I removed the other side. Now, since I tell you that it slides, we have to make the bottom of the gearbox that sits inside that housing, you need to make that peg flush. So the best way to do it is just take a flathead screwdriver and push that peg down. Push it down so it's flush, and there you go. The other side of it, you can take some snips and just cut it off right there. And there you go. Now we have a problem with the steel peg. Now that steel peg that you use to manually wind the gearbox, it's really long. So you kind of need to eyeball it, uh, preferably using the old motor. But since I didn't have the old motor, I had to like eyeball it. I'm gonna go ahead and do that with this one since I have a reference point. Just visually do it and just snip that off right there. And there you have it. Looks a little long. Yeah, take a little bit more off. Okay, that's good. Now, one of the problems is that once you snip off the rod there, that stainless steel peg rod or whatever you want to call it, axle, um, the tip of it, it's got sharp edges. So I need to get my Dremel and kind of grind down and round off the tip of that axle. That way when it's inside that main housing that holds it all together, that the plastic, it won't dig into the plastic that holds it there. So it's best just to round it off and make it nice and smooth, and then that way you don't get any more friction than you need, so the gearbox can move freely. And once it's rounded off to your satisfaction, then take a good look at it with whatever magnifying glass you can find. And if it meets your inspection, then you're good to go. See, the peg, it fits right in there, right into that slot there. And that's what we're trying to prevent from getting friction. You don't need any more friction than what you need. So that's good to go. So that's another gearbox ready to go. In case I fail in my attempt of fixing my own toy, at least I have a gearbox ready to go. Now, one thing that I should tell you is that gear on the original gearbox is the peg on the original gearbox is a little thicker than the one on the new gearbox. So what I have to do is I scratch the stainless steel peg or axle with a little sandpaper and put a little bit of glue on that peg, and then slide that big gear onto it. Since it's a robust gear, the glue adheres to it very well. And here I'm showing you where you have to take an X-Acto knife and just shave off just a little bit of those two areas there that I pointed out with the screwdriver, because the new motor is just a little thicker, like a micron thicker, and then that way when you put it inside and you put the housing over it, the external housing, it lays flush. And here I'm going to assemble it back together. And I'll show you how it works. Now for me, when I put it back on the railing system for the toy, I like to give it at least 2.5 turns. Um, that way, when you put it back on the railing system and you shove it down into the toy, it doesn't overwind the gearbox. So, I give it like 2.5 turns. Maybe it's just two. Gotta put that brace in there. That way. And don't forget this piece, because you need this piece. And there you go. Put everything back together. And let's play. Now, once you put those two screws in, it's good to give it like a good test run. Make sure it's working. Make it cycle. That way, if you put the toy back together and then it doesn't work, you're not kicking yourself for, you know, putting it all back together without testing it out first. So give it a good run, give it a cycle, and if you're satisfied, then you're good to go. Now, for the cargo carrier portion, to put it back together, it's good to slide one side in. That way you know it's in there. And then the other side, you can just push it in until it pops right in. It's better to do it this way. That way you can put your finger as to brace the mechanism when you pop in. I guess it would be the right side of the cargo carrier portion of the ship. That way you're able to brace it and you don't cause any damage to the toy. Okay, so this is the portion of the video where I'm going to attempt to fix my original gearbox from my toy. So first step is take your small tool and pry off that large gear from the main peg or axle, and you set that off to the side there. And the housing should come apart fairly easily. You know, it's just put together really loose, and the spring just falls right out. The end of it's all messed up, so I'm gonna straighten that out as best I can. Now, prepping the spring is a good idea at this point. That way it doesn't give you much trouble when you want to put it back. So you got to take the inner end of it, the inside end of it, and try and pull it out. Might give you a little trouble. And try to straighten it out. I'll show you why here in a little bit when I put it back together. But straighten it out as much as you can. By the time you get back to it, you might need to straighten it out again. And just go ahead and set it off to the side. So let's get all the little gears out. Get that housing divider out. Try to look at everything. Make sure all the gears have their teeth. All the clogs mesh. And yeah, I can see here that there's something wrong there with that main axle gear. Yeah, that S spring. Oh, and I shouldn't be able to do that. I shouldn't be able to push that axle through the S spring. I shouldn't be able to do that at all. So that's the problem with this gearbox. And it looks like somebody has glued them together. Yep. Yeah, there's a big chunk of plastic missing from that main gear. And somebody had tried to fix this before with glue. So yeah, as you can see, when I put the S gear or the spring gear back on the axle, if I'm holding the S spring, the axle moves. So that can't be right. So, okay, so we're gonna take the salvage parts that I could salvage and try and find one. And inspect the gears, make sure they're all okay. That C gear, you gotta make sure it's got some good grip to it, some good teeth. The main gear. And I'm gonna try and assemble everything together with the same gears, see if they work. Kind of like a run through, a rehearsal. See if I can get it to work. Now, the dogs really did a number on my gearboxes. So see, I have everything in a little bag just like that the first time. I'm never leaving my little gearboxes again in the car with the dogs, I swear. Bunch of jerks. Anyways, so I'm gonna go through all the little parts that I have left and try to find myself an S spring. See, now that comes off of the cargo truck. That's what I could salvage. And there's one. There's an S spring with the axle intact, and it doesn't move. It's a good one. Okay, we'll use that. And that's to the rat. And they didn't leave me much. So we're going to try it out here. And it works out just fine. Okay, so let's start the assembly process. Let's attach the main gear to the S-spring, or the spring gear. First off, you should do that second gear first. Put that in the middle. That big second gear goes in right in the smack dab in the middle, and then you can lay down the main gear with the spring gear on top and next to it, and then everything else goes in line. So that one right there, that's gear 1. And I like to do gear 1 before gear 2. It's just easier that way. And that goes above gear 2. So gear 2 is smack dab in the middle. Gear 1 goes above it. And then that would be gear 3. And that goes beside it. And I'm trying to do this on foam because the pegs on each gear kind of protrude out the bottom of the housing. So if you're doing it on a table, a flat surface table, hard surface, you put the gear in and it gets into the hole, but the peg protrudes a little bit, so it just pops right back out. So it doesn't hold it in there. So you either got to hold it in between your fingers or in some sort of foam. That way it'll stay in there. Each gear will stay in there when you put it in. Now I'm going to try that C gear. And the C gear is always tricky. It always gives you problems. Okay, this is not working. I'm just gonna have to hold it in between my fingers and put that C gear in there, and that's just the way it's gonna work. That's the only way it's gonna work. Let's cross our fingers. Let's see if I can put this housing divider without messing everything up. Now you got to make sure the side with all the protrusions is up. It's facing you when you put it back on. Okay, it looks like we have a successful merging of the housing divider to the housing, to the bottom half of the housing. Make sure all the gears are in their slots, and you're good to go for the next step. Now we put the spring in. Now, like I told you, you have to get the inside end of the spring and straighten it out. It doesn't have to be like pencil straight, just just enough, just straight enough. Because the next thing is, now that we have a working spring gear, um, we're going to have to wind up the gearbox. So on the spring gear, there's like little lips on the inside, and you have to work uh, the spring inside those little lips and get it in there. And once you can do that, uh, you have to put the rest of the spring through the little two protrusions. They look like little forks over off to the side of the housing divider. See, like it is there. Put the spring right through there, right through those little forks. And leave the rest of the spring hanging outside the gearbox. Just leave it hanging outside, and then put the housing cover, the coil housing spring cover back on, and there you go. And now you're ready to wind up the gearbox. Now, for this next step, to wind up the gearbox, it's best just to put the main gear back on. Don't put it all the way through, because you're going to have to manually wind it. And then put your fingers on either side of the housing. Don't put too much pressure on it, and definitely don't squish it, and just wind the coil back in. Let it freely wind back in by itself. Just do it gradually. If you have to put too much pressure on it, then there's something wrong. It should go in loosely with no difficulty. Just keep winding it until it goes in. Now for me, it's the coil's a little damaged at the very end, so I'm probably going to have to push that in, give it a little bit of help. Push it in there. See, it doesn't want to go in. So just going to go ahead and push it in a little bit, and that should be good. And boom, there we go. So on this thing, before I test it, I'm noticing that it's not working well. So I probably made a mistake, and I didn't put one of the gears right. So I'm probably going to have to disassemble it again and put the gears right. It was probably gear 1 I messed up on. I always get that one wrong because it's so tiny I can't see it, and sometimes I ended up putting it upside down. So let me get that done, and we'll be back. So off camera, I went ahead and I I put it back together the right way, and it works just fine. There it is, just working fine, fine and dandy. And now reassembly. So since this is the original gearbox, uh, all I have to do is push up on that main gear inside that larger housing, and the gearbox just falls in there. Uh, there's no real tension to it, like as if you were going to put in that new gearbox. It just falls right in, no big deal, and it's ready to go. Put that main housing cover in. And it's working. Well, to tell you the truth, I think the old gearbox, uh, preferably instead of the new one, it looks like the old gearbox runs a little bit faster than the newer one. I kind of noticed that it looks like that gear spins a little faster. It could be that it's the original gearbox and it's a little worn, so it naturally it moves faster. But hey, I'll take it anyways. It's gonna be all original. So we'll give it a test here, make sure. Yeah, it seems to be spinning just a tad faster. That's cool. I'll take it. Okay, so since this is the original gearbox, I don't want to put too much tension on it, since it looks like it's running a little faster than the other one. So I think I'll give it like maybe 1.5 turns, maybe. So let me give it 1.5 turns. And there you go. And put that in there, slide it in. Hold it together. Snap that guide in there, and there you go. Now, like I did before on the other toy, it's good to give it a test run. Go ahead and test it, let it cycle. If it runs consistent through the whole cycle, then you should be good. God, I can't believe it. I actually fixed the darn thing. I'll be damned. I noticed that there's a little bit of dust there. I should say that on the other toy, I did put a little bit of gun oil along the railing there, or that guide rail. And I don't know, I just took a Q-tip and, I rubbed a little gun oil on it, and nothing big, but I don't think it really needs it. So, it's good to test it out on another toy and see if it works out. So I don't think I'll put it on the original one. Don't forget those 2 screws there, because once you put that on there, and the assembly moves forward because of the tension, you don't see those holes anymore. So it's good to put those in first before you put the last 2 in. and the rest of it is just like always. I'm gonna give it one more cycle. I can't believe this. This is cool. Actually got it to work. You know what? It does move faster. The original gearbox does move faster. Wow. Nice. Well, this has been a fun repair. Hopefully I'll get to the rest of these toys that are not working properly. And slowly but surely I'll videotape what I do and how I do it, and share with you all so you guys can do it too. I mean, this is great. Well, I'd say this was a successful repair. I'm happy with it. Thanks for watching.